Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, reporting to you from On the Road with How I Discovered Schubert. Now, Schubert is one of those composers who, if you are as old as I am, and I'm 61 at this point, was kind of part of our DNA when we were young. Certain tunes, we didn't even know that they were by Schubert, but we knew them. He's one of what I call the in-the-womb composers, because you kind of popped out of the womb just sort of knowing your Schubert, or at least certain bits of Schubert. Now, I may not look like this now, but at one point I was a fetus. And as a certified former fetus, I can tell you that Schubert's music penetrates amniotic fluid with perfect accuracy. And the Schubert work that I absolutely knew cold when I emerged as an infant was the Unfinished Symphony. Of course, the reason is because my mother, who was carrying me around for 9 months, played a lot of Schubert. She had the records in her collection. And the version of the Unfinished Symphony that we had was Eugene Ormandy and the Philadelphia Orchestra, because Ormandy in Philadelphia was, for many American classical music lovers, your go-to ensemble. And it's a lovely performance of the Unfinished Symphony. I still have it. And it's very, very enjoyable. And of course, what we knew was the big tune. That tune is, it had words, which my mother taught me when I was a little kid. The words were, "This is the symphony that Schubert never finished." Of course, there are other words. Some people do it, "This is the symphony that Schubert wrote but never finished." But I like the shoo-hoo-hoo version better, because when I was a little kid, that was it was more amusing. And you can continue it. "This is the symphony that Schubert never finished. He never finished. He never..." Thus making it an unfinished tune to an unfinished symphony. Actually, the tune does break off. It is unfinished. That's kind of the part that I thought was unfinished. I had no idea there was supposed to be more movements after the second one. It always sounded perfectly well finished to me. But yes, it was the unfinished symphony. But there were a whole bunch of Schubert tunes that we kids knew. And you just knew them. One of them, of course, was the Ave Maria, which I didn't know. The Catholic kids all knew that, the ones who went to St. Mary's. But the other ones, the March Militaire number 1, remember that one? Ya da 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 bum ba. That's for piano, 2 hands, or orchestrated. But I knew it as "Bright is the street as the neat Boy Scouts march along." Yes, I know. The words were silly, but we knew it. You just knew it. And you didn't know it was by Schubert. You had no clue. Nobody ever told you that was Schubert's March Militaire number 1. You just knew it as the Boy Scout marching song thing. And I'm sure there were billions of other words in other countries going, that fit that same tune. The other tune that we knew by Schubert really, really well was Erlkönig. The lead, not the song. Just the opening. Boom, boom. Now, the reason we knew that was because, let's put it this way. We knew it, but we didn't know we knew it. Because when I finally got to school and we had music appreciation class, back in public school, they actually taught music appreciation with a textbook. The textbook was called Making Music Your Own. I'll never forget it. And when we got to the part on songs, which they told us were called Lieder in German, the lead that we had to know was Erlkönig. And of course, we got the whole spiel about how, it's this poem and it's by Goethe, the great German poet Goethe. And Goethe wrote this poem. And, we only found out it was pronounced Goethe much later. But it was Goethe. Sometimes Goethe or Goethe. It was Goethe when you first read it, and then when you learned how to pronounce German, it was Goethe. So Goethe wrote the poem, And we were taught about how it's just a masterpiece of characterization because the singer has to impersonate the narrator and the Erlkönig and the child and the father that wasn't, we didn't care about any of that crap. What we cared about was boom, boom. Why? Because it appeared in like a million cartoons. It was cartoon music. And, like Warner Brothers cartoons, I don't think it was in any of the Bugs Bunnies, or it may have been. But it was always during this sort of tempestuous scene with rain and clouds and a haunted castle up on a hill or something like that. And it was in a Western one, too, I also remember, the one with skeletons and things sitting out in the desert and horses galloping around. I mean, we knew the tune. We did not know it was by Schubert. It was only much later that, when you really start to follow classical music for itself, that you begin to realize that Schubert wrote all these terrific tunes, but we knew them. They were just in the air. And so when we came to do Schubert, or in the womb, actually, when we came to actually understand that some guy named Schubert wrote this stuff, we were totally prepared. It was already part of our musical world, part of our life, really. I mean, not even just there. And I wonder how many people actually come to classical music just because it happens to be something that we just encounter. It's part of our regular daily lives. And for me, Schubert it was thanks to my mother. She also did a lot of house cleaning to classical music. Some of you have mentioned that too, that your mother's cleaned to classical music and you picked it up that way. I cannot, to this day, whenever I smell lemon pledge furniture polish, I hear Schubert's Unfinished Symphony. It is the lemon pledge symphony. I just hear I smell furniture polish and I hear you do 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 do. So there you go. I mean, thanks, Mom. That's how we got Schubert. And I'm really interested to know how you folks also first encountered Schubert, how early it may have been, and when you realized Schubert was Schubert, which is just such an interesting part of it. I have to say, I started doing this series just because, it was kind of like a fun thing to tell these stories. But I think your stories are marvelous. I just have to get this out there. I think we're creating this fabulous bank of wonderful information and anecdote that's going to be incredibly helpful for other people who are just beginners, who are starting to learn classical music, who realize all of the different avenues and angles. Some of you because you were taking music lessons, or others because, just like me, it was just sort of out there, or you encountered it from your family and your friends. And, there's no one way. There's no right way. There are only just myriad fabulous ways to enjoy and encounter this music. And I love reading your stories, and I read every single one of them. So please do let me know how you first encountered Schubert and any of the other composers that we're talking about. I think this is a terrific fund of information to share with the rest of the world and with other potential music lovers. And I thank you all for participating. So keep on listening, friends. Take care.